Hi there, it's Everett. I think I am live right now, and I just wanted to welcome you, anybody who has tuned in. Um, this is called Friends of Recovery Estuary, and I watched Paul's live stream this morning, Paul Vanderklay, and he had talked a little bit about, made reference to anonymity, AA, that kind of thing. Um, and so I've said elsewhere at other times that this is certainly not a group for just people in 12 step recovery. Uh, and indeed, even though I am in 12 step recovery, I never share the name of the group that I belong to. And I just wanted to show you a second all the groups that actually belong or actually are affiliated with 12 steps. Now you'll notice that all of them use this book, which is called Alcoholics Anonymous, or the Big Book. And I'm going to show you how many programs there are. There's something like 50 programs, everything from Marijuana Anonymous, which the legend goes that people addicted to marijuana would go to Cocaine Anonymous meetings and then would kind of get laughed out of them and called lightweights. And so they went and formed their own. And I think what a lot of people find is that regardless of what the addiction is, it's the same disease and it's the same process for overcoming the disease. So we got gamblers, sex, we got workaholics, we've got debtors, clutterers. There's another joke about, basically there's a wrench for every nut. And there's a program really for any aspect of the food, beverage, or entertainment industry. I'm going to go just quickly and share this tab instead. So these are the 12 traditions, the long form. Our relations with the general public should be characterized by personal anonymity. We think AA ought to avoid sensational advertising. Our names and pictures ought not to be broadcast, filmed, or publicly printed. Our public relations should be guided by the principle of attraction rather than promotion. We feel it better to let our friends recommend us. And there's a whole amazing history of that, starting with articles that were written about AA, and really just led to a whole lot of publicity that just made AA an amazing force that it is today. And so the way I handle anonymity is I read from the Big Book. I am in one of the 50 fellowships that uses the Big Book as its basic text. So I'll tell you what my name is, but you'll never know exactly which fellowship, at least not at the level of press, radio, films, and TV. I'm so excited. It looks like I've got 3 watchers so far. I'm trying a different time of day, and so I'm hoping that maybe this works a little bit better. So having said that about anonymity, I'm also going to say that I reached out to John Van Donk, who does the estuary stuff with Paul, and he and his group just had a meeting, and they said it was totally fine to do estuary online. There's been some sort of idea or controversy around maybe it should only be done in person, but they love the fact that it's being used in a couple of different ways. And so thank you, John, for that. And I think I have a banner somewhere that'll show you. It's basically estuaryhub.com, and you can go there and get trained. And so if you haven't watched one of these before, I do invite people onto the screen later. But first, I pilfer a little bit of music, and then I do a little reading. And then if people are interested, they can come on screen and we can use estuary protocol, which I will describe at that time. So I'm just going to share this with you first.
Hello there, the angel from a nightmare, the shadow in the background of the morgue, the unsuspecting victim of darkness in the valley. We can live like Jack and Sally if we want, where you can always find me. And we'll have Halloween on Christmas, and in the night we'll wish this never ends. We'll wish this never ends. I miss you, I miss you. Where are you? And I'm so sorry. I cannot sleep, I cannot dream tonight. I need somebody, and always this sick, strange darkness comes creeping on so haunting every time. And as I stared, I counted the webs from all the spiders, catching things and eating their insides, like indecision to call you and hear your voice of treason. Will you come home and stop this pain tonight? Stop this pain tonight. Stop this pain. Don't waste your time on me. You're already the voice inside my head. Don't waste your time on me. You're already the voice inside my head. And don't waste your time on me. You're already the voice inside my head. Don't waste your time on me. You're already the voice inside my head. Don't waste your time on me. You're already the voice inside my head. Don't waste your time on me. You're already the voice inside my head. I miss you, miss you. I miss you, miss you.
So this fella's name is Frank Watkinson. You can catch him on YouTube, and sometimes he's got a different name that he uses, but it's basically Frank Watkinson. He's got over 1 million subscribers, so that's even bigger than Paul Vanderklay's channel, which is crazy. So I had a question around, have I gotten any dings around copyright? And yes, I have. At this point, I don't really care if they erase the video or whatever. That's fine. I don't know enough yet how to like go in and erase things if I need to. So we'll just kind of see. My one video was banned. It was the one where I had a Linkin Park song and I used their actual video. But I think if you talk about the video afterwards or have some kind of comment, then they won't actually ban the video. Yeah, if they take my channel away, that would be kind of a bummer. Hi, Phlebas. But I do pay for premium, so I'm hoping they'll at least give me a warning first. That, I could use that kind of notoriety, actually. I feel like that might be good for me. So I'm going to read out a little portion here, and then I will drop a link if anybody wants to. Actually, I can just drop a link right now. Let's see here. There we go. And if anybody wants to come in, they can. So as I mentioned, kind of right at the outset, I don't speak for any particular 12-step fellowship. I have belonged to a couple different ones. And because I use my actual name, then I have to keep the fellowships anonymous. Some people go on podcasts and they don't have, they just use, say, Everett V for their last name. They never show themselves actually visually. And so there's that type of anonymity too. But I talked to one of the old timers I was at a retreat last weekend, and he was okay with this level of being anonymous. So I'm going to read a little bit from Bill's story. On a couple of different live streams, I read from the doctor's opinion, where we learn that addictions like alcoholism, many of the other ones as well, it seems like some people have an allergy to alcohol in the sense that they have an unusual reaction to it. And some people have an unusual reaction to gambling or sex or whatever it is that makes it much more likely that they're going to become addicted. Hey, Lorica Sancta, my friend, is here too. Nice to see you. So this is Bill's story. Bill, of course, was one of the founders of AA. And I'm just going to read a little bit of this. If anybody wants to pop on after that, that'd be awesome. Then, I can kind of briefly go through the protocol. Oh, is that not the correct link? Oh. Let me invite people. Let's see. Here, I'll copy this link. Yeah, let's try that one. Sorry, Brett. War fever ran high in the New England town to which we knew young officers from Plattsburgh were assigned, and we were flattered when the first citizens took us to their homes, making us feel heroic. Here was love, applause, war, moments sublime, with intervals hilarious. I was part of life at last, and in the midst of the excitement, I discovered liquor. I forgot the strong warnings and the prejudices of my people concerning drink. In time, we sailed for over there. I was very lonely and again turned to alcohol. We landed in England. I visited Winchester Cathedral. Much moved, I wandered outside. My attention was caught by a doggerel on an old tombstone. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier who caught his death drinking cold small beer. A good soldier is ne'er forgot, whether he dieth by musket or by pot. And pot here does not imply what we call pot, but alcohol, because they used to call that pot back in the 1930s. Ominous warning, which I failed to heed. 22 and a veteran of foreign wars, I went home at last. I fancied myself a leader, for had not the men of my battery given me a special token of appreciation? My talent for leadership, I imagined, would place me at the head of vast enterprises, which I would manage with the utmost assurance. I took a night law course and obtained employment as investigator for a surety company. The drive for success was on. I'd proved to the world I was important. My work took me about Wall Street, and little by little, I became interested in the market. Many people lost money, but some became very rich. Why not I? I studied economics and business as well as law. Potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. Though my writing was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. We had long talks when I would steal her forebodings by telling her that men of genius conceived their best projects when drunk, that the most majestic constructions of philosophic thought were so derived. And thanks for your patience, guys. I'm just going to read one more paragraph here. By the time I had completed the course, I knew the law was not for me. The inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. Business and financial leaders were my heroes. Out of this alloy of drink and speculation, I commenced to forge the weapon that would one day turn in its flight like a boomerang and all but cut me to ribbons. Living modestly, my wife and I saved $1,000. It went into certain securities, then cheap and rather unpopular. I rightly imagined that they would someday have a great rise. I failed to persuade my broker friends to send me out looking over factories and managements, but my wife and I decided to go anyway. I had developed a theory that most people lost money in stocks through ignorance of markets. I discovered many more reasons later on. So that's the beginning of Bill's story, and you can see where there's a beginning of insanity. And I'm just going to add a couple of friends to the stage here. Welcome, Brett at PVK.
How you doing, Everett?
I'm doing great. Brett,
Nice.
Brett's in a haze of smoke there. How are you, my friend?
Excellent, sir.
Good. So I reached out to Vendant because Grim Grizz had very kindly put me on his channel. He was kind of investigating what I was doing, and he talked about a couple of concerns that he had, and I thought, he was right to do that. So I reached out to John, and he said, I basically said, look, John, I owe you an amends because I did this thing without clearing it with you first. And John, I said, like, how can I make it better? I'm pleased to remove estuary from my name or whatever. And he said, it's good you reached out because we had a meeting yesterday, and we know there have been things going on with the estuary name that aren't strictly in-person estuaries. And we've decided that we love the idea. And I kind of did a double take, and he said, so don't feel bad. Just continue doing what you're doing, and give us a little shout out if you can. So shout out not only to John, but also to Jameis, who is an amazing teacher of the protocol. And I've met some good friends in there as well. People who, I guess they're kind of anonymous in their own way. They don't really participate much in the TLC. But I love TLC and I love estuary. I love the idea of salty and fresh coming together. It does take a little bit of adaptation because freshwater fish don't always do well in a salty environment. But I think for some of us, thanks, Stephanie, so much. Nice to have you here. Just reading the comments there. So I brought together these two ideas, and so far, I had a couple guys on the first one. I think my friend Lorica Sancta showed up. He's from Europe somewhere. And Lorica, I don't know if you can jump on or not, but if you can, great. I might even just show the link again really quick.
You can pin it if you have a browser window open to YouTube, which is muted, which you'd want it to be.
Oh, yeah.
If the little three dots next to where you have the link, you can click that, and one of the options will be pin it, and that keeps it right there on the group chat. So
Okay.
when people come in, if they want to jump in right away, they can.
Yeah, and thank you, Paul. Nice to see you.
It's good to be
Um,
here.
yeah, you're kind of the one of the big reasons I'm doing this, and I appreciate your support in trying to get some folks to come and listen. And yeah, I'm just thrilled to keep doing this every week. I even have a StreamYard paid account now, so I don't have the little logo on top, which is kind of nice.
Let's see. Okay, so you have a paid account. I don't seem to have the option to stream this to my channel.
Oh,
StreamYard continues to change and have different levels,
yeah,
so I don't know. Maybe
yeah.
I'm not signed in properly. That could be too. So it's a
It,
little
it
murky
could
the way these things work sometimes.
it could be I'm going to have to just look and make that an option. I know they do that on Riverside, right, where you can stream to your own channel.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely, for what you're doing, I definitely stick with StreamYard. Riverside is really good for the one-on-one conversations, but it doesn't have all the tools that StreamYard has for what we're doing here. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I love it. I see shorts of myself, and I'm like, holy cow! There's Paul's really getting some mileage out of this. This is great.
I think there's probably some more clipping I'd like to do with my conversation with you too. So
Well, that's
we'll
great.
see. We'll see. It's all this stuff is sort of as time permits, and
Yeah,
because I'm in Austin, um, and when I go to these things, I never quite know how many things people have for me. So sometimes I have a little extra time, and I have a little bit of extra time before the estuary meeting tonight. So I saw you were streaming, so I thought, oh, let's jump in. And it's also the case with YouTube
yeah.
that when other people are watching you, it will recommend you to the other channels that I watch. And so
Okay.
it's really helpful, as Stephanie said when she leaves a comment. YouTube takes all these things, and that's why, even though I don't like saying like and subscribe because it seems so mercenary, in your case, I always hit the thumbs up, because if YouTube sees that thumbs up, it'll say, oh, Paul likes that channel.
Yeah.
The things that Paul likes, these other people like, and so that'll continue to enlarge your signal.
Okay. Yeah, I like how StreamYard puts it right onto YouTube. I don't have to know how to do that, like how to go back and forth. Um, so you guys would know all about the estuary protocol, and I feel like maybe I'm a training ground now for Paul's upcoming estuary. Um, but yeah, I'd be curious to hear, like Brett, what got you interested in estuary.
So you know a little of my background. My
Yeah.
background, 12 steps, also Celebrate Recovery, and then I did a lot of facilitating in Celebrate Recovery. Started few of them with my parents. So I facilitated groups, and so when I heard how the protocol worked, I'm like, that's kind of a really cool way to navigate a group, And then also he had pointed out, like when somebody comes in with something incendiary that nobody wants to talk about, at least they were able to vocalize it, but
Yeah.
everybody voted against it. So that's a
Yeah.
very helpful thing to show the person, kind of put a mirror up and say, like, nobody's interested in this.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, because when you started this, I thought that's really cool, like, because then you can kind of come from a framework and not have to explain necessarily maybe lingo that may be recovery lingo. So I thought that was really cool. But then it was funny because when Cassidy was doing her plug on one of the streams about
Hmm.
London, and she talked about it being a brave space, I'm like, I totally agree. But what was interesting is when she said, what did she say? I forget how she worded it, but it was something like a recovery program for the meaning crisis or something like that, I think is how
Yeah.
she might have put it.
Yeah.
Paul might remember how she put it. But the The one thing that I think is so different about this than 12-step groups that you're in is one of the fundamental things that keeps everybody on the same plane and then not getting unruly is no crosstalk,
Yeah.
which is totally not how it works here. Um,
Yeah.
and so I thought, well, I mean, obviously in recovery, you're not supposed to be telling people what they should be doing. That's why that works in that environment. But here, it's nice just to have an open dialogue. It doesn't necessarily mean somebody needs, I don't know how you'll navigate that when somebody acts like a know it all and is trying to tell somebody how to stay, on the straight and narrow type thing. So that'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. You know
Whoa,
what I
are you
mean?
okay, Paul?
I'm fine. The computer's fine. I just wanted to move the computer a little closer, and yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Paul, I just found
Oh,
that you can now go, like, there was a little button that allows me to let you stream to your own channel.
would you like me to do that?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'll
Thank
boost
you.
this signal.
Yeah, absolutely.
There
I
we
gotta
go.
learn how to do that also.
Yeah. So when I go to add a person, it has guests can stream to their own destinations. And then I can do a branded welcome for guests too, but I haven't developed that yet. Brett, I love it that you mentioned that, because one thing Cassidy talked about too was a brave space, not a safe space. And I don't know what her experience was, but to me, what's really important is the estuary protocol, I think, does increase the probability that it's a safe space. Of course, it's always brave to come on, but we do want it to be safe. And Jameis and John taught me some good ways of moving conversations along if we have to. So, Paul, you're no stranger to these parts. So, you kind of developed this estuary with John. What were you seeing? Was it kind of an answer to the meaning crisis?
Well, I think, we were sort of looking for a way to, let me get back here. So what had happened was we had started these Jordan Peterson meetups, and those groups were multiplying. But I started mine in January of 2018. By June of 2019, and it was actually COVID of early 2020, there was a sense in which that Jordan Peterson meetup space had played itself out. Jordan had been gone for a while, and a lot of the people who had been attracted to the Jordan Peterson meetup groups were increasingly coming in. They just wanted to talk about their grievances. And there's a funny performative contradiction with respect to complaining about the fact that wokeism is grievance, and then everybody comes in with their own anti-woke grievances, and it just didn't make for as good a conversation. And at that same time, Rod Hare was pestering me. I had gotten a lot of people pestering me when the channel was growing fast for me to start a thing, because people wanted to support a thing and be members of a thing. And I told people, I said, I'd really like you to go to a church and be a member of a church. Yeah. And I don't really want to start a thing, because once I start a thing, I'll have to run the thing. Yeah. But Rod kept pestering me. And so, what do you really want out of this? I said, I'm not trying to change Christianity. I'm not doing any of those things, but I would love a space where people could talk outside of church, because I see the difficulties in church. I see the difficulties in the culture, and I would call it estuary. And when I said estuary in that video, that word took off. People attached to that word. And so then, John and I had been doing different things to try to figure out how to manage the numbers of people coming into the meetup and how to improve the conversation. And then John really sort of, simplified it into this thing. And I said, oh, it's a protocol. And John said, no, I don't like that word. I said, no, but that's what it is. It's a protocol. So let's use this protocol. So then we started transitioning from the Jordan Peterson meetups to the estuary groups. And then the Thunder Bay conference happened. And John and I were getting back from that. And I met John for breakfast when I was in Southern California for church work. And John said, what's next? And I said, well, you do a conference, John, and it'll be an estuary conference. And John had more ideas about what he'd like to do. And so that became the Chino conference. And then from there, because I said, if estuary is going to grow, we can't describe it on the internet and have people, really know what's going on. So if it's going to grow, what if we did conferences that we can bring in people that people would like to hear?
Yeah.
But the main focus of the conference isn't to fangirl on your favorite speaker. The main focus of the conference is to get together and do what happens in estuary and have a really intensive estuary experience.
Yeah.
And so that's where the conference side of this has been growing.
Wow, that's great. And so now you're in one in Austin. That's kind of where you are today.
Yeah, and this isn't technically an estuary conference. I was invited to give an adult education talk at an Orthodox church, but it's Rigel's church.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said to Rigel, and I told him this before because I knew that he was starting an estuary, and there's some other people in that estuary that are on YouTube. And so I said, I'll tell you what, Rigel, is something I offer people. I said, if you start an estuary and I can swing it, I'll come and help you get going. But actually, they started it a while ago, and their estuary has really taken off.
Yeah.
So they've got the problem now that the space that they use, which is in an Episcopalian church, they've outgrown it. And so, but I just met with that Episcopalian priest that was on P.F. Jung's, and I've really encouraged him to start using estuary every Sunday morning, do it every week, because when you do it every week, that's where you get the much more intensive trust, feeling of community. That's where you really get the small group dynamics going.
Yeah, that's for sure. One thing that, well, actually, why don't I just start the protocol? I know we only have a couple guys, but I just love going through it. So the way that I learned it through your show, Paul, was with the P's, right? So we can plug ourselves and why we're here, and then we pitch. And so, we can pitch ideas that are, let me just look it up here. So it's intellectual stuff. So things that we're reading or things that are provoking our thinking, world events. So something happening locally in your area, or politics or something like that. Personal. So something you're going through personally. And then estuarily. And I think people have been a little bit scared to jump onto a themed estuary, but I think all of these are part of our recovery, whether it's the meaning crisis or whatever it is we're recovering from. So why don't you, let's see who's on Brett, why don't you pitch first? I'll drop the link here in case other people want to come on.
Yeah, I'll pin the link on my channel too. So because the difficulty is that if they're watching on my channel, then they won't know how to get on, and so that's why I'll pin the link on my channel, which then that link then will bring them to your
to my channel.
But it's, people sometimes get discouraged that not a lot of people jump in. But the truth is, a lot of people are working, they're doing other things, and they can't necessarily devote the time or attention to this. And so,
yeah, fair enough. No biggie, guys, if you can't. So, Brett, why don't you pitch something? And then if we pick something and someone else wants to come on and talk about it, that's fine.
I think I would like to talk about um, since my background came out of Celebrate Recovery.
Mm,
Ironically, Saddleback had a pretty decent system, and it was a funnel system. So the a lot of the Celebrate recoveries that we started, it drew in a lot of AA and NA and all different types from programs that were already in existence. And so the difficulty was transitioning them from the Celebrate recovery into the church. Now
mm,
they were going to church, and some of them may be serving, but they kind of looked at what I'm doing here in the recovery space is my service, which again, 100%, you need people standing at the door, right? Um, but
yeah.
for me, what I found is the healthier I got, and I served. I spent a lot of years doing that. But then it eventually it dawned on me, especially for instance with men's sexual addiction groups, talking about the sin day in, day out with guys that have gotten a lot of recovery. It does have benefits for the new person, but it also tended to cause some of them to revert, relapse, whatever, because they're like just all they're doing is focusing on the sin, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just thought, talking about that transition, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I mean, obviously, people are called to different types of ministries and different callings to be the person that stands at the door. But is it a healthy thing as a rule? Because I know people that would say, I'm coming coming to this thing until Jesus comes back. Things like that. Which is again,
Okay.
I don't begrudge them for that. Especially if they need a meeting every day. I'm
So,
not to criticize that at all.
so you're pitching. What about that do you want to pitch?
I guess the funnel process, like kind of like, hey, we're trying to get better, we're trying to strengthen ourselves, and like Paul was trying to point people to a church and become more of an active part.
Hmm.
And a little, like maybe moving the meeting program down to once a week, or like because some of them would do it, you know, several times a week. They kind of, I don't know. It was
Okay.
like it became the thing.
Okay. Great.
I don't know.
Yep. So we'll funnel or we'll pitch the funneling process from group to church. Is that and kind
Yeah,
of what
I,
that
I
looks
guess I
like?
would just say what the next level of your healthy progress in your journey looks
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you very much. And how about you, Paul? What are you thinking about today?
Well, I'm listening to. I often tell people the real sin of round two is playing round three and round two, and
Yeah.
um, so I'll pitch, even though I'm definitely going to vote for Brett. I'll pitch. I was having Rigel took me out to breakfast with a few of his friends this morning, and one of the guys made the connection between the emptiness of liberalism and the openness of estuary.
Hmm.
And it provoked a thought in my mind that estuary, as Jonathan Peugeot has said, whenever he's asked about estuary, he almost always says the same thing.
Hmm.
He says, look at the name. It is what the name is. And I think that's right, because I actually think, and because estuary is such an open space and such a boundary space, it is best when it is adjacent to how can I say it, a space that isn't so open.
Hmm.
Because Peugeot often talks about the center and the periphery.
Yeah.
An estuary is a peripheral thing. But what tends to happen with peripheral things, like liberalism is a peripheral thing to Christendom. And part of what's going on with the post-liberal is that if you lose the Christendom, you might lose liberalism too. That's sort of the point of Tim Keller's, that clip from Tim Keller that he plays. And so even though liberalism is very open and celebrates openness, it is sneakily relying upon the centeredness and the rootedness of Christendom.
Yeah.
And I wonder if estuary also functions that way, because I actually think one of the best applications of estuary is church adjacent, where, because it was so funny because I met this priest who's been running the estuary in his church, and he didn't know who I was. He's never seen any of my videos. But then Rigel said, this is like one of the fathers of estuary.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, thank you. It is such a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, if you're not doing it every week, you don't even know what a wonderful thing it is yet. Because, again, what I sort of stumbled into at Living Stones with estuary adjacent to church, where people can easily go, this is from one to the other. Because sometimes people go to estuary and they go long enough and they get a sense of the church people, and then they're like, well, what if I just stayed and watched? It's like, of course, the church people, it's like, please, you honor us with your presence. So I think that there's a relationship between Christendom and liberalism and church and estuary.
Okay. Wow, that's a great pitch. Brett, I see you've teleported home now. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know Grizz was a little concerned that you were driving.
Mama Grizz.
Yeah. Is everyone okay in there?
Now, I'll say this. If I was actually doing, like, hosting a stream, you got to have your head examined to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
That's true. I don't think I would do that either. Okay, well, I'm going to pass. So let's, and the third part is going to be...
you can't pass.
I can pass. I don't have to pitch.
No, because we're forced to vote for someone else, and that would mean that it would be a tie. Well, then you'd have to break the tiebreakers.
Brett has to choose. He's being very sneaky.
It's
actually,
here's a familiar face.
Oh. I hope I don't get yelled at.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't play. I wasn't allowed to come on because you were driving, but now it's safe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got to be a friend of recovery to be in this one, right?
No.
You do, but you can be an acquaintance of recovery too.
All right, we'll do that then.
Nice. Well, welcome, Grim. So we were just...
Getting some echo from you, Grim. Do not mute your other...
Oh,
I don't have the earbuds. I don't want to ruin it, but you only got 3 people, so I thought I'd try. But if the sound's going to be bad...
No, I think it's the echo.
The YouTube.
Do you have YouTube? Yeah.
I paused it, but...
If you're on your phone, close the YouTube app and just use the StreamYard in the browser.
Oh, so there's another fella named Joseph Fast that's trying to come on, but it says his devices aren't connected, so I can't let him in. Grim,
from the phone.
Did you want to pitch something?
Well, not if I have an echo problem. So is it gone now?
Yeah, sounds a lot better.
No, I have no pitch. I just wanted to make sure you guys had enough to talk with. Oh.
We do. So you're going to pass.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will pass.
So, Brett, I heard from PVK that he was going to vote for you anyway.
Yeah, so that means because I'd be voting for his, and actually I would like talking about it only because I do have a weird, I don't know, I have weird feelings about, I love Tim Keller. I'm not a big fan of the whole coin term third wayism type thing. Okay. But I get it, and then the dynamic of the so basically Paul.
Yeah, well, and we'll throw Mark S into this too. I don't know if Mark wants to pitch something really quick.
Everett, you can make us tighter together. There's a little button on the bottom
Okay, yeah.
that focuses us in, and then we'll feel more. No, not that one. No, not that one. No, not that one. Not that one. No, there's another. There you go.
Hey,
That
number
one.
2.
The intimate view.
Wow. I do feel closer now.
Where's
that's
Mr.
great.
DeMille when we need him?
Exactly. That was really good. I enjoyed that. Okay. So, Grim, maybe you can tell us a little bit about, I don't know if you've been interested in estuary. I know you've come on Paul's estuary style stream before. What do you think of estuary? What kind of got you interested in it?
The potential of having like multiple denominational people in the same room. So, and the like what they do with churches around where I'm at, they don't seem they seem more interested in arguing with each other than outreach to sinners. So I thought estuary would be good for that. And the fact that people don't know how to make friends or have conversations anymore, especially those that are coming up now, like born on devices, that like, here's how to talk to other people in any form is a good thing.
Okay, great. Thank you. Did you want to pitch anything today? Oh, no, I asked you that already. I'm in danger of being a mestuary.
About
all right.
S, do you want to pitch?
Sorry?
Does Mark S. want to pitch?
Yeah, I don't know. Mark, are you there?
Oh, yeah. I don't have a pitch.
Okay. Well, we'll go to the voting round then. Are we going to go for the funneling process from, yeah, I guess, Brett, I feel like I'm not describing it all that well. So it was, oh, you're muted.
It was basically just the funneling process in like a Christian sphere, or well, it was like a Christian, well, it was a recovery Christian sphere to trying to, encourage them to have more involvement and connection in the church instead of just staying in that sphere, to sum it up as best I could.
Yeah.
But it's not very deep.
No, but it's, in some ways it's church adjacent, and it's almost like estuary, could be somebody's pathway into the church as well. So it's possible we even have some kind of an angel in terms of a topic that might work here. So, and then Paul, yours was around Christianity and liberalism, and how liberalism really depends on Christianity in a sense, and that if Christianity were to disappear, so would liberalism. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my pitch was much more, does estuary require something alongside it to actually invisibly lend it something for the openness to be maintained? In other words, a vacuum actually can't be sustained. You need, let's say, a spirit in the room in order for the openness to actually be facilitated.
Okay, great. All right. Well, let's go back to the voting round. So Brett's going to vote for PVK, I'm guessing, and PVK is going to vote for Brett. Kind of works that way. How about you, Grimgriz? What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about Everett's pitch.
Oh, I passed my pitch. You can't vote for my pitch.
You got way too many passes. Okay. I was gonna vote for Paul because like liberalism without forgiveness can't exist, but it turns out he his actual pitch was about estuary and spirits. So Brett gets my vote.
Okay. Nice. How about you, Mark?
Well, I originally came on to talk about Brett's pitch, but Paul's is interesting. I'm just driving but I'm hands free. So
okay.
I'm I'm sorry. I'm volatile. I have, I'm all over the place.
So you're parked on the side of the road safely, and you're talking with us hands free. That's excellent. Thank you, Mark.
Well, I feel like Brett's I have vehement opinions on, but Paul's is actually something that sounds interesting to explore.
Okay. So we've got a couple for Brett, and I'll go for Brett's too. We'll just go like unanimously for Brett's. But I would contend that FOR-ESTuary has the church next to it, and the recovery program you were talking about, Brett, is also church adjacent because it can't exist without a church to sponsor it. So, Brett, we're going to go to the next stage here. So we're going to go to round 3, which is to play. So why don't you go ahead and lead us off, Brett? Just what got you thinking about that?
So yeah, I mean, I it's funny because to formulate this even deeper than I had already done it, but basically, I really cared about people getting, having recovery, and I really cared about people bettering their life and moving forward. And what I would see is people struggle over and over and over again. Now, I understand that's just the nature of the recidivism rate or the relapse rate, and I know the percentages. And AA has been a successful program. You can't deny that, and it's been a very open program, similar to like what we were talking about with Paul's pitch. And it's not about this; it's about this. And so you focus on the recovery, getting sober, get your mind cleared, and hopefully there's a spiritual experience in that. But it seemed that over the years that kind of morphed, and that also bled into the Celebrate Recovery programs that I was a part of, to where that was the thing. Like, my community is in this community, and it kind of is like, these are the only people that understand me, that are going to get me, and therefore I can't really move out of this because this is where I feel comfortable. But again, I don't have a problem with that if that's what you need to do to stay sober, clearly. But it didn't seem like that was all it was. Now, there's also the negative side of that, right? Where somebody goes full-fledged into Jesus, and in some churches they would almost hyperbolically, and I'm not 100% sure if Saddleback does this, but they would hyperbolically be like, Jesus is what keeps you sober, which I'm not disputing that in their whatever, but it's like they all of a sudden threw all the recovery stuff away, and it was all church, 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 and they got a spirit of religiosity in this. And so, I guess it's the balance of trying to find ways to get people into that healthy response of the spiritual experience, but not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but also get them engaged in a community, in church, with, people that don't necessarily have the struggles you have, because that old saying, you're like the 6 people you spend the most time with, right? You kind of evolve into that space. So if I'm hanging out with nothing but people that are struggling, I, again, nothing against serving that community and having certain, but having more of a healthy growth around people that do have things that I can look up to and develop having mentors that are good, godly men that can speak into my life from that angle as well. They don't necessarily have to know what it's like to be what I was. So I just see both sides of the coin, and I just didn't know exactly how to, what is there? Does anybody have an idea of what is the best method, or why I'm completely off base and I just need to leave things the way they are? I'm not trying to change anything. I'm just asking how you can healthily transition people into a space where they can work on that spiritual experience and see what that's like differently.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me what the relationship is between Celebrate Recovery and AA? or NA or SA or all those different 12-step programs?
What they did was, and Everett can probably even share too. I mean, he's very knowledgeable in this. What they did was they paired each step up with a beatitude. They had their beatitudes. So they made it more Christian centric. Plus, they made it to where you're not fearful of saying Jesus in a meeting without everybody, thinking you're a zealot. So it was like, because AA, you did have a lot of secular people. And when somebody found their spiritual experience, they'd come in and be like, y'all people need to get Jesus. And so it just didn't, and so it was a place that you could go. And the idea was, it was kind of another funneling process. And Celebrate Recovery that I was in, we'd always be like, listen, man, you can't do it with Celebrate Recovery alone. You need to get plugged into an AA group. You need to get plugged into other groups.
Yeah.
And get a sponsor and all that stuff. But it was a separate space that was definitely more Christian centric, to where if you were choosing a sponsor, let's say, it's kind of like choosing a counselor that's a Christian versus a non-Christian counselor.
So they weren't sort of just Christianized 12 steps. They were a different thing. And so someone might say be in a 12-step program and a Celebrate Recovery group?
Yeah, sometimes. So I looked at even starting a Celebrate Recovery, and to me, it's a pretty big program. It's a pretty big undertaking. It started, of course, with Rick Warren at Saddleback. I forget the other fellow's name, but he's the one who actually wrote the
John Baker, right?
John Baker, yeah. He wrote a lot of the manuals, and yeah, like Brett said, I think it started as a way of dealing with what they call hurts, habits, and hangups. And so you don't have to be an alcoholic, you don't have to be a gambling addict or whatever. That's kind of the strength in it. Usually they'll have a meal beforehand, which is really nice. Then you'll go to kind of more of an open meeting. They might have like a little testimony thing going on there. And then you break up into groups, and just from my experience, it might be like males in one group, females in another group. And even though you might be dealing with different problems, the idea is that the solution is the same. So they do use the 12 steps, but they break it up into, I think it's 8 principles instead. That's part of what I don't like is they combine a couple of the steps, and so it's, to me, it's almost like they tried to reinvent the wheel with Jesus as the higher power. And so they don't use the big book of AA kind of as their main text. They have all their own kind of stuff.
That was probably the most difficult thing to deal with, because you had people that were very pro AA and very, well plugged in, doing things there, and they would want to bring AA into a Celebrate Recovery, and then you had people in Celebrate Recovery that were trying to, literally create their own home group, and it was going to all be Christian whether you like it or not. So it's like new people just didn't know, they couldn't keep the spaces where they were and just let them be. So they had a little bit of a defiant spirit in that, but
I've been in Celebrate Recovery for about 1.5 years now. I've been in AA for 15 years, and I've never gone through the steps in Celebrate Recovery. I've gone through the steps through the big book of AA a number of times, but I did buy the curriculum for Celebrate Recovery steps, and I looked at like the 4th step and stuff. And going to the meetings, okay, so one thing about AA is like people will tell you when you're new, pray every morning for God to keep you sober. But then after a while, it's like that's not in the big book. After a while, like in the 11th step, it's pray every morning that God keeps you from selfishness. Because AA teaches selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of all our troubles. And I just don't see that in Celebrate Recovery. I see like hurts, habits, and hangups, traumas, abuse, all this stuff, which, you got to deal with. But, I like in the groups I visited, it's like the steps are just not as important. And it seems like in the Celebrate Recovery literature, and I think this actually connects with Paul's pitch, maybe, I don't know, you could be the judge of that. But since Celebrate Recovery is always sponsored by a church, I feel like you have to almost be loyal to that church in a way. And loyal, it's like, I like the fact that you can talk about Jesus and Celebrate Recovery. However, it's like the freedom in AA to say whatever you need to say is necessary,
Yeah.
and without any type of attachment to. And there is, I think that's interesting, having like a discussion group that needs some sort of attachment to a higher ideal. When in AA, that's just plain old sobriety. That's it. Like, that's the connector. But in Celebrate Recovery, you have this kind of conflicted primary, like AA has a primary purpose of the third tradition, to carry its message to the alcoholic that still suffers. But really, Celebrate Recovery has two primary purposes, And so it's almost kind of conflicted. And I love my CR group, but it's just, there's like two people in there that have worked the steps, and everybody else doesn't get that they really think that it's just a place where you come and vent.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, everybody vents a little bit, but that's not what it's about. And it's about like carrying the message of recovery. Because when you just vent all the time, when you just talk about your problems, like you're saying, Brent, eventually they come to define you, and I don't even think that's what AA meetings are about, talking about your problems,
No.
And so anyway, yeah.
Well, thanks, Mark.
The Celebrate Recovery group I go to, the megachurch just built this huge kids park inside of the church. I don't go to that church, but I go there for Celebrate Recovery. And now they make us meet in that, like next to this ball pit. And I'm almost thinking about quitting because I do not want to have a recovery meeting next to like a kids play place. It's like,
no, we're going to have to put up.
I don't know what they're thinking. Anyway, thanks.
Grizz, wasn't that on your channel that, come to church, protect the kids?
That's the Millstone Group idea. It's something completely different.
Yeah.
I would say it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of celebrating in this Celebrate Recovery movement based on Mark's statements there. The people are going to vent. It doesn't seem to be a celebration.
Right.
There are healthier ones than others, without a doubt. And it just like in AA, you can get to an AA group that's very not great, and then you'll find some that are pillars in the sobriety community, and you end up in one of those groups, and you're like, okay, these guys got some serious sobriety. They, the way you could just hear what they're saying, and you can there's value in it. But he may have brought up a good point. The allegiance factor to a church is a bit of a hindrance because it actually, churches throw agendas in. And like we even had one of the leaders that was in charge of this Celebrate Recovery become a pastor. And now his paycheck is tied to, this program adjacent. And then he started making a lot of major decisions. And a lot of them use Celebrate Recovery resources for a period of time, and then they just abandon it, and they'll call themselves believers in recovery or whatever it is. But it wasn't my experience. The ones that we started and the ones I was part of was highly, the 12 steps were a big part of it. Now, Celebrate Recovery may have morphed over the years. It's been a long time since I've actually been a participant at a Celebrate Recovery, an actual Celebrate Recovery. So if that has happened, that would be unfortunate. But I also know they wouldn't allow any AA literature to be put on the table, which was kind of crazy to me. We would defiantly put where and whens out regardless. You know, where and whens
Yeah,
are times and meetings for people that don't know what that means.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to sound like the angry recovery guy. You know, I'm not trying to bash it. I love my Celebrate Recovery group, but it is like there are some it's like it's just doesn't have the potency of AA, you know, in my
No,
opinion.
you're
But
right
it's not.
though. You're right
Yeah,
though. You're talking about, and from my experience, church people would be sent to this program from that church, and they would come with this, again, like I said, it's almost like a religiosity type mentality where they were it was all about Jesus, and it was like this whole, like they had it all figured out, and they'd be in this space not really understanding the 12 steps at all. And so it
Mhm.
was kind of like a disjointed, you could see the difference in somebody not thinking they need to work the steps. Like you could see that,
yeah,
with to your point. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. I think I've seen that a little bit too. I mean, I went to Bible school 20 years ago, and I was a great student, and I couldn't stay sober. So it's like knowing a little bit about Jesus is not the same as working the steps.
Well, and I know this might sound a little controversial, but I do believe that the AA Big Book is an inspired book. It's not maybe meant for all people from all times like the Bible is, but I believe God used those guys to bring just the most amazing message to people who suffer from these problems, right? Behavioral problems or substance problems or whatever. And to try to Christianize it to me was kind of like, I don't know if you remember the 80s where you'd get like, if there was a good secular band, you'd get a Christian band that tried to sound just like them. And like David Meese, I think, sang "Follow You" to the tune of Waterloo, and it's like, oh no. And I just thought, man, we're doing this to recovery too. Like, I love what they're trying to do, but um, to try to take what has really been very effective and or churchanize it or whatever is, yeah, I agree. I think the potency just wasn't quite the same as far as I could tell. Welcome, Chad.
Hi there.
So, Chad, we were just talking about what kind of brought us to FOR-ESTuary, and I know you've been involved in Paul's at times, like the FOR-ESTuary style conversations.
Yep.
And so, you can tell us about that if you want, about how you like that. But just wondered if you had any thoughts about Brett's pitch.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the pitch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Brett, you want to bring them up to speed?
I'd be interested to hear Chad comment, because I agree with everything that's been said here. And part of the reason I'm very careful with FOR-ESTuary to not attach a funnel to it.
Yeah.
Is I think for the integrity of the conversation and for what the people need, they need to say what they think. And that's why it's different from a Bible study. Because in my experience, church people edit what they think, and that's pastorally unhelpful. And so I didn't really know what Celebrate Recovery was. I knew it had to do with recovery. Duh, it's right there in the name. But my concern was, as you guys said it, that, oh, wow, AA, is a really great track record for helping people find God. Why don't we attach a funnel on this and make them church members? When I think part of loving your neighbor means you have to value your neighbor ahead of your mercenary church goals. I think it's fundamental. But
yeah.
I think that's what Rick Warren kind of fell into, is he had already marketed something in John Baker that kind of, so for their big church, they wanted to keep funneling members to the big church. I think that there may have been some I think they jumped the shark to a certain degree as far as the ministry being all about the 40 day of purpose type thing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I was just listening at the comments there. No, go ahead.
Chad, what's up? What do you think?
I mean, I wish Rick Warren would have read the big book, because the Celebrate Recovery Study Bible is, well, I don't want to trash the Bible, but it's got the Bible in it. That's the good thing.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta understand the way it goes with these study Bibles, which is exactly that. Say it's a study Bible, but then they can slap anything they want to next to the Bible. So you really got to watch those. But I'd be really curious about Chad's, because Chad, of course, he's got a lot of experience with 12 steps, and really he probably just went over to take care of the baby.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious about this, because I see a lot of churches, including Christian Reformed churches, have Celebrate Recovery groups, and I just didn't know much about them. But I was afraid of exactly what I've heard said today.
Well,
I got a couple of pieces of literature here. I mean, I got a lot of literature here. I've never read these, by the way. These are my wife's. And so, just right off the bat, like I can say that I am in recovery, and I am affiliated with a 12-step group, but I don't want to say, like, I really try to adhere to the suggestion of the 12 traditions, and I really tried to do that for a long time, and basically just fucked that up since being here. But like, I really do try to still say, like, I still want to adhere to that. So, like, yeah, there's that. But anyhow, yeah, we got this. The 12 Steps for Christians, which I've never read.
Oh.
The Recovery Bible. I don't know what that means. Discover the classic books that inspired the founders of modern recovery movement. Bill W. Emmett Fox, James Allen, Henry Drummond, William James, and more.
Yeah.
This book, if you want to know about it, this is the best book that talks about the whole thing.
Oh, wonderful.
This is a great book.
Yeah.
I think so. I've never been to a Celebrate Recovery meeting, but I think what I like that the 12-step model does, the best thing about it is that if you come to it, I think, with like a desperation and kind of like just out of your own answers, and you're just like, I'm fucking fucked. If you have that real, like, kind of attitude, and I think if you're willing to pursue whatever recovery is offering you, the real thing that it'll lay out before you is, like, perhaps everything that you think you know is completely fucked. Your whole idea about God, everything. And so it would have you kind of request that you set aside what you think you know, start at the bottom, and say, well, I don't know, maybe I should examine what it is that I think I know. Where did I get these weird ideas? Every idea that I have. And so I like that model. And from my understanding of the other models out there that would already prescribe to you a God, I think that kind of like already fucks you up, because like it kind of like already just kind of does a little bit of maybe what's the right word? I'm thinking of like enabling. It kind of does some weird like evangelistic enabling for you. Now maybe that works for some people. You know what I mean? And I think that it can. But I think if you're like people that I know who are the real deal, who cannot stop, who desperately need to stop, who are like, and then they find that, that it wasn't actually about substance, because like you have gamblers, you have Al-Anons, you have all sorts of these different folks who are suffering from basically a spiritual illness, and that's what it all is boiling down to. It, and that spiritual illness, I think, can basically be summed up in separation from God and my fellows. That's it. And so I think the 12-step model does is it basically takes my piece of shit model of life and takes it into the garage and says, let's strip this thing down and look at what we got for real, and then turn it all over to God, whatever that is. And I don't care what God it is, whatever God will listen. The problem is like we say that in a lot of 12-step settings, but we don't actually act that way. You know, and I think the problem is like we can get like for a long time I was really attached to the idea of a God that I just seek, and that really worked for a long time. You know, it's like I'm going to seek God and help others, and seek God and help others, and that was basically the creed. And the more that I was doing that, my life would get infinitely better than it was. The problem was when it came time to actually examine who God might be. Now I didn't say who God is, but who God might be. That became very, because I would be like, if you were like into crystals or whatever, I'd be like, yeah, bro, whatever, dude, I'm cool with you, man. But if you mentioned Jesus or something, I'd be like, dude, how fucking dare you? You know, and and then, but now the weird thing is now that, because I had a weird conversion experience out of reading the Bible or listening to the Bible, and now it's like when people start talking about God is nature or the trees or whatever, I'm just in my mind, I don't say it out loud, but in my mind I think, you haven't really looked at it though, have you? You haven't really examined it, because I know, because I've been where you are. And so yeah, the stuff in the my problem with estuary and AA, and this is probably, or any of the 12-step stuff commingling, is I know it's freaking people out who are like, who want to like be a part of the estuary movement, because a lot of them, and rightly so, think I'm not a fucking alcoholic or an addict. I'm fine, dude. I just want to talk with my friends about philosophy and God and art and whatever the things are. But I don't really, this 12-step shit is culty, and it is.
Yeah.
And so I think that it'd be wise that one thing that the 12-step movement did really well was they said, we won't affiliate ourselves with anybody. I don't give a fuck who it is. Nobody. And and I think that would be an interesting thing. If I think the estuary movement could pull anything from the 12-steppers, it's the traditions. And I've told Paul this for years now. There's wisdom in the traditions to examine, but that freaks people out too, because you know it's not a thing and all this weird shit. So it's like it takes. I like the slow movement of it. That's unfolded. That's been really nice, and I'm glad that nobody moved in quickly to like wrangle the thing into more than it already is. And I think it unfolds naturally, as all traditions do. And that's my whole share.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Chad. Yeah. Any comments from anybody?
I don't know if it's a comment. It's like I've been holding on to it for a while and it has nothing to do with what anybody else said. But as neither a Christian nor someone in recovery, the problem that I have, like looking at this thing, is that the Lord restoreth my soul. And everything that I've encountered with regards to people in a 12-step program is like hinges on their permanent state of being an alcoholic or whatever. And those two don't, for me. So like, if there was no background or anything, the notion of celebrate recovery would be like, we were alcoholics and now we have Jesus, and so we meet here instead of at the 12-step. Is how I would read it, you know, out of ignorance. And I've learned that's not what it is here. But so there's a comment.
Yeah.
If I were to steel man celebrate recovery and be fair to them, I think that its purpose was noble in that they were trying to broaden different groups of people getting together to struggle with their particular thing. But when we would start one, we would have to blend groups in, which was very difficult, you know. So you would have a chemical addiction group, and that basically covered all of that, which was doesn't always work, as we know, right? The people that have been. Then you did have like a sex addiction group, which again, they needed to work stuff out. You had overeaters, people that, and then we found out there were actually categories in the eating things. There were disorders. There was, so the biggest one that I was a part of had probably 8 different groups that subtopicked on their specific thing. But what we would do is we would collectively as a group meet together, do a worship thing, and then have an initial mini speaker, but then break off into our groups, similar to how Estuary does, like at a conference maybe. And then we would have that more meat and potato conversation about with people that were struggling with the specific thing that I was struggling with. And there were some great relationships and bonds built in those arenas.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think you have that with Celebrate Recovery and AA, where you have people that are going to try to hijack it with an agenda,
Mhm.
like, you know what I mean? So it's like on both sides, you're always going to have rebels that are going to come in and try to do things the way they want to do it. And that's just what happens, you know?
Yeah, I have to go really soon here, but I want to address a little bit what Grizz mentioned here because I think since the 12-step invention or discovery, I guess, psychology has been like massive in the culture, and so and that too has made its way into that world, and that's caused a lot of problems, I think, because it started mixing up language. Like the 12-step language is very specific and it's very different from the medical. It's very different from the psychological work. It has its own kind of like frame, and and then on top of that, you have like the real, I think, and this is my full understanding of the thing. There are literally no rules in a 12-step organization. Zero rules. Now, if I want to recover, I'm going to have to adopt a certain way of living, and I will have to like submit to what I think are going to be rules. That's been my experience, anyways.
Yeah. What's the only requirement for membership?
But it's not a rule. It's just a
No,
requirement.
right. That's
So,
what I mean.
anyways, the thing, and this is the point, because now we can get into that, right? We can get into this back and forthness or whatever. But in the actual literature, it says when you approach the new man, approach him as someone who has recovered with an ED. So it's like this idea of I'm not like I've recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. That's the idea. And so I'm not going to be going around being like, oh, I'm always in recovery, and and all this stuff, and relapse is part of all this kind of stuff. It's like, but now the problem is you have all these different kinds of like opinions that go around, and this is actually why they wrote the literature, because they discovered something that had never happened before, that they could actually replicate a recovery. And that meant getting somebody in touch with the higher power and living life well and helping another person, right? And all three of those things, I think, were like kind of like the same on the same kind of platform, highest thing there. Helping others, probably number one, God and recovery. Now, the more that we've gone and done this thing, the more kind of scattered about all these ideas have kind of like watered some of this down. But my understanding is I'm a recovered person, right? I'm recovered. And so like there are people though in recovery who think, no, I'm always going to be recovering and all this. And okay, now we're just like splitting hairs again. And so to Grizz's point, I think that's important to note, like when I say that I'm a addict or whatever the hell the thing is, it's not like this. It's not like I'm a piece of shit or anything. This is my ID card. This says I got this thing. I've recovered from it. And because I've recovered from it, that actually means that I have a calling, like I have a set of duties that I must live out, and that is to serve God and help His kids. That's what that means. It actually doesn't have anything really to do with my past, other than I get to share my experience with you. And if I don't do this, where I get to gracefully receive gracefully this gift of being able to help others, then I could probably just go back to the misery that I already had. So
Mhm.
I think, I don't know, it's yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. Yeah, I know when I read the big book, I read it as a therapist trying to understand a client. And when I read through it, I thought, wow, in many ways, this is me. Now, not maybe with this particular issue, but certainly there are areas of my life that I might be doing okay, I'm managing, but I'm not living well. And if you're a Christian and you think you're okay, then I'm not sure if you've read the Bible, right? Like, we know that we're not okay without Christ. We know that we're constantly, what is it? We're saved, so we're being saved. We will be saved, and we are saved. Like, it's all kind of at the same time. But man, when I read scripture, I think everybody has something that they're doing despite adverse consequences. And so I don't know that anyone should have that much trouble relating to people in recovery.
I would like to repeat something I said earlier, maybe in different words, probably even less understandable than I was before. But I just want to start by saying that if I had to choose between AA and Christianity in a heartbeat, I would leave AA. But however, you know, for me, like there's a part in the back of the big book where it says bottles were only a symbol. So there are definitely, like Chad said, there definitely are people who will just blame being an alcoholic on everything that happens in their life. Like, oh, even if they're sober, oh, I'm just an alcoholic, you know. And I try to never do that because for me, it's a big book where it like talks about what alcoholism is, and then it goes through right before you start step 4 and take a moral inventory. It says selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of our troubles. So it's not even that alcohol is, it's selfishness and self-centeredness. And then the 12 steps have nothing to do, except for the first step. The rest of the steps have nothing to do with drinking. They're about.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're breaking up there, Mark. But yeah,
sorry about that.
I think
it's about getting rid of self and or the best you can. And I mean that's the thing. It's like I don't go around telling people I'm an alcoholic, but I do have to wake up in the morning and kind of know that I am like inherently a selfish person, you know, because that just is true. And so that's what the whole program of recovery is about getting out of self. So I hope my audio wasn't too terrible for that.
It was really good. One more thing before I go. The other big difference between, I think, any singular 12-step program and something that's more of an umbrella thing, like a Celebrate Recovery or like a IOP group or something, is like the identification of the specific, because like, and I've already heard it on here, they said like, well, like chemical, you know, all the chemical guys go in one group. And it's like, no, not even a drug is not a drug is not a drug. It's not the case. I don't think that's the case at all. I think alcohol is very different than opioids and all that different kind of stuff. It's very different. And actually, I almost think like alcoholic is a very different person than somebody who's like an opioid addict. It's very different, dude. Because like I've met opioid addicts who have straight up died, been Narcaned back alive, went right back out and did the shit over and over again. And I don't know many alcoholics that really do. I know alcoholics that are, Homer Simpson yellow who are drinking themselves to death. I've seen that,
Mhm.
but it's different. And so, like, when push comes to shove, here's why I think the identification factor is so important, because if my back's against the wall and I'm in a dark spot on my own, in my own little like hell, I need to be able to call a guy, one dude who I know who's got the same exact shit that I got, and not fucking Narcan or gambler or a sex addict or whatever. We may all have these different kinds of things, but I'm a fucking alcoholic, and an alcoholic knows what it's like to be alcoholic. It's very different. And that's, I think, and the whole program is kind of born out of that idea, like one alcoholic helping another. Imagine being in like 1935, where a world where AA doesn't exist, the 12 steps don't exist, okay? And they, like, one guy accidentally trips over this solution and carries it to another dude. And then they say, we should like go to the hospital and see if we can find a drunk there, right? And so then they go there and they tell the doc, like, hey, do you mind if I like talk to one of your drunks here? And the doctor would be like, why would I do that? He'd be like, well, because like we found a solution. He'd be like, are you fucking insane? But like what happened was the doctor that did allow it, he spent his life helping drunks, and he was so desperate, he had literally no answer. He's like, fucking, I got nothing for these guys. And he's literally spent decades with these guys. And he said, I guess, go ahead, Bill. And like, it was like discovering a whole new continent. Like, that's how immense the thing was. And that's why people who are really in it, are like, this is an actual ongoing miracle that's continuing to unfold. It's wild, dude.
Yeah.
It's wild. And so I honestly think if whatever the thing is that's kind of like bringing you to your knees, I don't care if it's gambling, shopping, TLC, alcoholism, whatever the thing is, and you really want to find a way out, find a 12-step program, because it will, and then just give yourself to it, because it's not going to hurt you. I've never seen this shit hurt anybody. It's just, but you have to be willing to kind of die. That's it.
Yeah.
Die in this other way, and like, and it's what Mark said. It's selfishness and self-centeredness. And when I look at the world, that's when I see the problems of the world, I see it reflected in me, and it's all in this self-centered selfishness and self-centeredness. And that's why I actually think it's not relational ontology that's going to save the world. It's other-centered ontology that is actual ontology. That's the agapic way that the world actually works when it's working well. It's not about our relationship. It's about what I do. It's about what I sacrifice, because I desperately don't want to. But when I do, things happen.
Yep.
God, I hate this. This is so weird. We shouldn't even be talking about this. I got to go.
Okay, bye, Chad.
I wanted to, it's funny because my aha moment in recovery was when I was doing my steps and I'm writing my inventory, and I'm doing a list of people that I've harmed, list of people that have harmed me, a sexual inventory. And when I started going across the columns, right? When I hit the column of what was my part, like this is the list of people that have harmed me.
Yeah.
And my sponsor's like, yeah, you got to write what your part was. I'm like, give me an example. And I laid one particular scenario out, and he goes, so you don't think you could have played any part in that scenario? Like, you don't think you could have changed its outcome? You don't think you precipitated more to it? And I was like, well, I'm like, well, then I'd be putting all sorts of stuff down in that column on every one of these. And he's like, exactly. And then I worked through that step, and I realized I needed to be humbled. Like, the idea that I'm pointing the finger, like Chad was saying, it's this fault, it's that fault. This person did this person did that. It was like, like you're trying to wake today's society up, claiming the victim category. And it's like, no, I played a part in every single one of those scenarios. Guy punched me in the mouth. What was I doing there? I had no business being there. Whatever it was. And to see that connection was to me, for me, was revolutionary in my recovery, because then I
Yeah.
really could focus on the problem is me. Like guys would say, my problem is me, type thing. And I realized, okay, now I can work this. Now I
Yeah.
can, you know,
Well, and the struggle in my experience is that if people have been abused as children
yeah,
or
that's an exception. No.
well, actually, when you're in step 4, which is kind of where you do these columns, what I found was my role in it was I had held on to it for 40 years.
Yeah, but
And
you know,
I had let it twist my own thinking. I had let it right. And so did I cause that problem when I was that age? Of course I didn't.
right.
Right. But I've prolonged my own misery by not getting the healing and moving on. And that's why it continues to haunt my family. Right. So we have to be very careful about assigning blame, but responsibility is very different than that.
And before you write that down, I don't even know I am holding on to that. It's like I don't even understand that like stuff that happened to me when I was young. I'm using that against people currently.
Yep.
And I don't mean to sound victim blaming to people who have been abused. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying like, that you don't even understand how that's affecting you until you look at it like that.
Well, I think
Right.
for me, because part of that is my story, and for me, I realized that it was I needed to know it wasn't my fault for me, because for me it was I get I blamed myself for it, and I felt like, and that was wrong. I was a child, and that
Yeah.
should have never happened. And so for me, and that's why maybe my sponsor knew, because he knew my story, and that when he got to that one, he's like, that doesn't count. He goes,
Yeah.
scratch a line right through it.
Yeah.
He goes, that has nothing to do with what we're doing. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean it isn't part of the conversation. It just means when it comes to working it across to what my part was, and that was helpful for me. Again, I don't know if he did that special for me. That's just my experience with working the steps. And he was an amazing sponsor.
Yeah, and
It's
I
a
mean that's the thing about the 12 steps. There's not a absolute perfect way to do it. It's like a guide, and everybody tinkers with it a little bit for what's needed, you know. And yeah, that's awesome, I think.
yeah.
But anyway, hey, thanks for the discussion. I have to go too. I actually was getting a call from a friend in Celebrate Recovery.
Oh, hey, thanks, Mark.
Nice.
Good
I'm
talking
not
to you.
expecting a Christmas card this year from those guys.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting a call, but so anyway,
Thanks so
thanks.
much.
Take it easy.
Yeah,
God's funny like that.
he is
I want
funny
to
like that.
I want to give a public service announcement now. I'm going to be leaving too soon, so I'm going to be shutting down my feed. If you're on my feed, you want to continue this conversation, you need to go to Everett's channel. I'm going to drop the link. So just go from the feed that's on my channel, go to Everett's channel, and like and subscribe to Everett's channel, and
I didn't even pay
that
Paul
way
to say that.
that way you can continue on the conversation on Everett's channel, even though it stops on my channel. So, and Everett he's still in the double digit subs. And I think,
Yep.
it's not a bad thing in the TLC to have
A small channel.
a small channel. I was gonna use what you said before, which just kind of kept making me laugh.
My rubber dinghy?
Yeah, it's not a bad thing to have a little dinghy. You work with what you got.
That's
And
right.
and so he's got a tiny little boat in the flotilla, but switch over to Everett's channel and like and subscribe to his channel. A modest channel. There you go. A modest channel.
Thank you.
And because that way, Everett, you've talked about the fact that, I mean, part of sort of getting into this space is really kind of establishing a time slot. Now, Grim Grizz is just so massive, he doesn't need a time slot. He can go whenever he wants to go.
I aim for 11 a.m. I just don't regularly hit it because I'm me.
But Everett, what time slot are you thinking about doing this regularly, and how often?
Yeah, good question. So Thursdays is when I can do it because that's my day off work. And I like this time slot because, I can still make dinner for my kids because it's 3 till 5 my time. And then people seem to be either off work or available. So unless I hear from someone else that I'm, it's not like my dinghy's going to hurt their channel, but their channel might sink my dinghy. So we'll try for 3 to 5 my time.
3 to 5, but Mountain Time? Are you in Mountain Time?
Mountain Time.
Okay, 3 to 5 Mountain Time on Thursdays.
5 Eastern.
5 Eastern.
Yeah.
And Everett has, he's a therapist. He's got specialty and recovery. And so what's really nice about the flotilla is not all the ships are the same. Different ships have different styles, different specialities, different roles to play. And so if you're watching my channel and you've enjoyed this, go look up Everett and like and subscribe to his channel, because this really works when I really love what Chris Howard has done in the mornings. I mean, it used to just sort of be him. And now, there's a good group around him, and there's more room as this thing grows. But the whole thing is make some friends, have a little group, and be loyal to your dinghy.
Thanks, Paul. And I take heart knowing that I'm freaking out both the estuary and the recovery people.
Nice. and go subscribe.
You're doing something right then.
I guess.
Go subscribe. We know you don't watch half of your subscriptions anyway. It's not a commitment to ever come back to the channel. He did a good job today. Give him the subscribe and forget about it, or make friends.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, we'll see you guys.
Yeah, I gotta go harass Paul at some event in Austin or something. So I gotta bounce too. Thanks for having me on, Ev.
Oh, have fun. See you guys. Wow.
That was awesome.
I did not expect that. Well, we got trolled by some people in the comments. I didn't have time to really keep up with it.
That brought me up. Made me think of something. I don't know if you have somebody, but I think it would be important. We found this out the hard way. If this is going to be a space where people are vulnerable, you may have to have moderation in a much more significant way, where you give somebody monitor powers to where they can, kick things pretty hard, keep that. Normally we're just open. We just don't care, right? We just let people say what they're going to say unless they're not name calling or whatever. But this may be something where you maybe have to trust somebody that can. And the other thing that they can do is they can be the outside meeting person, where they can, speak if somebody's going through something and they're not going to come online, but they're okay with talking about it in the comments. It's going to be hard for you to do both of those things. It's just impossible.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. So do we call you Shane? We got R. Shane Jenkins. Good afternoon. I think you're muted.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We call you Shane?
Bummer. My connection must just be too bad.
You're good.
Yeah, you sound
I
good.
can't hear you guys. I'm going to have to try to call back.
Okay.
Okay, man. Take her easy. Hey, Upcycle's there too. He
Yeah, he's the man.
he is the man. He bought like 10 memberships for Paul's channel this morning. Um, and William Branch came over here. So I know one thing that I'm going to have to do is learn how to drop my link onto YouTube while I'm doing StreamYard. Um, let's see. I'm going to add this Shane Jenkins. There we go.
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yay! You
All
bet.
Nice.
Hi, Shane.
Hey.
StreamYard gets quirky, boy.
Yeah.
Hey.
Oh my goodness. I just don't get very good signal throughout my property, so I never know. Sometimes going to Discord fixes everything, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
I was just
Well,
super excited to hear that last little bit of conversation. Was like, I don't know. I feel sad that I didn't get to hear all of it. I'll have to rewind and listen.
you can rewind. Yeah,
I
you betcha.
really appreciate the integration of faith and recovery. And it's bizarre that at a certain point they need their separate spaces.
Mhm.
Um, but I also don't think they can exist without each other. Um,
Yeah. Well,
I yeah.
sorry, go ahead, Shane. Finish that thought.
No, I think I finished my thought.
Okay. So here's where it can get a little dicey, at least in my experience, is I ran a group for my church, um, and it was based on a book called Steps. And that book is by John Ortberg, and it's a great book. We did it kind of like a book study, but it became kind of like a group as well. And the problem was if I'm sharing, like if I'm part of the what does Grim Grizz call it? The foolish transparency protocol. Um, these people also know my wife, and they're in ministry with my wife. And so if I'm having a hard time with my wife and I say something about it, that might change the way that they feel about her or interact with her. And so that's why I think, at least for people who are in the type of desperate straits that brings you to recovery, you almost have to have a separate space and um, really have that level of anonymity that allows you to just completely drop all of your um, facades or whatever. And then as you are getting more strong in your recovery and you're sharing, you're doing, I guess, the 12-step work of just carrying the message, that's when you can, at least in my experience, you can do things like a book study to try to point people toward an actual 12-step group.
One of the things that I learned, and again, I'm still a work in progress, but my sponsor told me not everybody needs to see my fourth step. You know what I mean? Like I not,
Yeah.
and that was nice to hear, just because it's like it isn't necessary. Not, everybody doesn't need that. And you don't know how people are going to react to certain parts of your journey. And I spoke with someone else about this too. Um, but I will say this: the way that the Lord has grounded me, I also recognize the value of me being able to share certain things and the way God's able to use those opportunities for whoever I'm speaking to. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like I'm not saying I'm a complete open book in my entire, but I'm also comfortable with talking about any aspect of my life. But that is what recovery and Christ has done for me is it's put me in a place like that. Now that may not work for everybody. It may not ever get to that place for some people. And but it may also. And the idea that I have something of value, it's like in the 12 steps, it's like if you have 24 hours, you can benefit the person who doesn't, the person that just walked in.
Yeah.
And so that's the way I see it. And I'm not any further along than anyone else. The old saying, I'm, 20, I've just got this 24 hours, man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not better. I'm not, and so, yeah, I just want to be able to help people And if my past, the wreckage, and if any of that can help someone, I'm definitely not going to lock it up in a box either, you know? So, but this may take some learning doing this type of thing, you know, and how the best, like if somebody comes on and starts dropping chalupas, you know, that you might be able to somehow navigate. Well, you're a professional,
Well,
you know how to do that.
yeah, well, so it was really interesting because Paul coming on really boosted my numbers. So he brings his posse with him. And there was somebody on there who didn't have a real name. And I thought, I wonder if it's that guy that Paul was having trouble with this morning.
Oh, Rob.
Recovering estuarian. And the problem is, because that person's on Paul's channel, I can't kick him off. Right. So that's where I got to make sure that, people who are actually here on my channel, I
Yeah,
actually have
but
the power
you
to
could
kick them off.
yeah, but you could address it to, like, if Paul was here, you could address, because he's not streaming anymore, but you could
Yeah.
address it to Paul, and Paul could manage it from his
Right.
end too. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
no, having a person that's going to be a regular person, that even if they're not coming on, the least they could do is kind of watch your back and just watch the comments and just make sure somebody's not getting hurt.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
being,
You're right,
but
because it's that's a whole other aspect of it that is just, yeah, beyond, like in some ways beyond my attention sphincter, right? Uh, I'm trying to pay attention to people on the show, and you've got all these comments going on in the background, and some people were absolutely just trolling Paul,
yeah,
and I thought,
and
you
he's
can't
used to that. So
you can't come in and troll my guests, right? You come in my house and kick my dog and kick, you know.
that's the
Uh,
bad. That's what he meant about small channels. Like the negative side of having a larger channel is there's gonna be a percentage that are gonna stalk you and give you a hard time. So, and it's
it's the
something to
cost of fame.
consider.
Yeah,
Well, it's something to consider even starting a channel, period. So
yeah, that's right. And
that's
I
why that's
consider
why
that.
it's a brave space, because it's not like a normal it's a safe space, but it's also a dangerous space.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
understand what I mean? So
It's safe-ish.
yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Brett, for coming on today.
My
Um,
pleasure. If I can
yeah,
do it regularly, I will. I might, like I said, I might be doing like just having to listen to it until we get going, until I can get
yeah.
home, and then I can engage a lot more.
Well, and you can tell I have my own little liturgy I like to do in the beginning anyway. So, uh, did you hear the song today?
I did.
Yeah, wasn't that guy awesome?
Yeah, he was cool. That's what I
Doing,
meant about, but that was one of the things, because I knew you did the LinkedIn, or the Lincoln Park one. And
yeah,
I'm like, well, so the deal is, from what everything I've researched, and I'm not sure if a warning is the same thing as a strike, but I know that if you get 3 strikes, they can literally take your channel from you. And if you have developed an audience and you have a lot of videos,
yeah.
those are gone. So, um, yeah, just,
Beware.
you just want to pay attention to the rules as best you can. I mean, because you're probably going to inadvertently get those things without the intentional,
Yeah,
deliberate stuff. So no need to, try. By the way, it doesn't work to what you were thinking. Like, oh well, as long as I give them credit, that doesn't work.
they don't
Apparently,
care.
yeah. Apparently, it isn't just enough. Now, if it's a small enough person, yeah, maybe they like the attention, but a lot of times, from my understanding, is they will give you a hard time.
Well, I was kind of feeling like, wow, I understand Eminem now. Like I'm banned in Belarus. That's just my insane addict brain thinking I'm like Eminem. But no, I was like, wow, this is cool, man. I got banned in a country. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I'd prefer they don't take the channel because I love the attention from the, you know, 10 people who watch. So, but anyway, well, thanks, Brett. And I'll end the stream. and I will be back next Thursday.
Also, I just noticed William Branch, I think, did something with Ethan, so I'm gonna have to check that out. That
Oh,
sounds
really?
awesome. Yeah, because he had his original one on Mark Parker's channel, and that was a great one. But there was a lot more meat on the bone, so I would love to watch that.
William did a rando on there.
Apparently, he just said in the comments about how he did the the search for the holy technique.
Yes.
Yeah. So he did one too. So that's going to be cool.
Oh, William, I'm totally going to look at that. Yeah,
Yeah.
you betcha.
He won't be on camera. It'll be like the radio rando. I'm certain of that. But either way, it's super cool.
All right. Well, God bless, Brett. Thanks, man.
You got it, buddy. Thanks for having me.
All right. Peace. See ya.